Okay, so no one showed up for class, which is fine. But I'm gonna do a video of the game, the walkthrough, how to set it up, how to do your questions. Just know that it won't be like a full hour's worth. It'll probably be maybe 30-40 minutes worth of footage. Because this game also is not a super long game. It's a pretty short one. It's a game one. So there's really not a whole lot of like difficult things to talk about. It's a pretty simple game, so it shouldn't take too long. But if you have any questions after going through the video, after watching it, maybe trying it on yourself, feel free to reach out and let me know. So yeah. Okay. So we have 5 students. We have M, N, O, P, and R are each to deliver exactly one speech. Speeches are exactly one of 2 topics. We have friendship or liberty. And each student has only one major. We have 2 geology, 2 history, and 1 journalism. And then we have our conditions. So this is a pretty, in my opinion, it's a pretty unique game. I wouldn't even know. I guess you could call it a grouping game because we're not ordering anything. It doesn't tell us to order who's giving these speeches or anything like that. It's really just kind of matching them up. So for example, we have our students, we have to figure out what speech they're going to do, and we have to figure out what major they are. So, I mean, it's pretty much, I guess you could call it a grouping game. We're kind of grouping our individuals with their speeches and their majors. So as far as like a setup goes, I'm going to set it up like similar to like a double sequencing game. So I'm going to put my variables over here. And I'm going to create 2 rows underneath those variables. And I'm creating 2 rows because I'm going to designate one as the speeches, friendship or what was it, liberty, friendship or liberty, and then another row for their majors. So doesn't matter which one you do. I'm just going to say the top is the speech, the bottom is the major, just because that's how I had them written out. So yeah, so as we go through, we're going to just kind of drop them into their respective rows and go from there. So our first rule says exactly 2 of the students speak on friendship. That helps us out a lot because technically up until this point, they could all speak on friendship or they could all speak on liberty. It's not telling us how many had to speak on friendship or had to speak on liberty. But this rule in particular is telling us that there are only 2 that are on friendship, which means that everyone else would have to do liberty. So that means that we're going to have exactly 3 liberty. So basically, we're extending this out to basically like say that these are our variables for the top row. And I like to write them out like this. So then when I am going into my diagram and I start placing things, I can just slash them out as I go. It's almost like I've got variables for it. So if a game ever gives you repeated variables like we have here, we have 2 Fs, 3 Ls, and it gives you a specific amount for one of them, or you have to have at least this many or maximum this many, I recommend writing out the number that they're giving you so then you can kind of keep track of it. So in this case, if I plop down 2 Ls, I can keep track and go, okay, I only have 1 more L to place, and that's going to prevent me from placing 4 Ls or all 5 Ls or something like that. So that's my rule number 1. Can't really do anything with worlds on this. And when we think about how we're going to make worlds, we're thinking about what are my different possibilities and how can I create that into diagrams. So in this case, if I have 2 Fs and 3 Ls, that could go under any one of my variables and it could create so many possibilities. I don't really think that this is not a rule that you would start creating worlds on because it's just kind of elaborating your variables. It's not really giving you different scenarios. Rule 2 says that a geology major and a history major speak on friendship. That's really helpful because we only have 2 friendships, right? So that means that we know that they are geology and history. And I'm going to block them in so that every time I move that F, I have to move them together. So as far as making worlds for this one, we could make worlds off of this one. I would not recommend it because technically what happens is, let's pick up F and H. F and H could go here, can go here, 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 here. That's a lot of worlds just in and of itself right there. And then let's say we put F with M, I now have to figure out where G can go. And so even though it's only creating 5 worlds for F and H, we have to basically multiply that by 4 more times because we have to figure out where F and G go. So given that it's the second rule, I'm not going to make worlds off of this. I'm going to keep it as is. Very worst case, we can at least kind of start with it because we can at least place the variables down, but I'm sure that there's something more restrictive in my later rules. Rule 3 and 4 kind of, I'm going to count it as 3 and 4 because technically it doesn't look like they're the same rule. They look like different rules. Rule 3 says M speaks on friendship. I'm just going to plop that right in my world. The moment that a rule tells you exactly where something goes, that R is the first one or T is the second one or M speaks on friendship, plop it right in there. Don't even worry about writing it because writing it down does nothing for you. If you can just plop it in there, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that third rule, we don't have to think about anymore. We just delete it. Fourth rule says R speaks on liberty. Again, I'm just going to plop it right in there. I don't have to think about it. It's one less thing for me to worry about. Not even going to write it out. My next rule, I guess you call it my 5th rule, says that neither P nor R do geology. So I'm going to write it like this. P and R, I can't have G underneath it. And you can even go over here too if you want and say G can't be there. So that way, if you do get tempted to put G there, you have a slash there that says, can't put G there. Okay. As far as making worlds for that one, we could actually do something with it. I probably would hang on until we got to that last rule. But we could do something with it because even though we know where something can't go, we can turn it into figuring out where it could go then. And what I mean by that is if we're restricted from putting G into these last 2 places, I have 3 empty spots that I could put G in. And that means that I can put G, and I only have 2 G's. So that means that there's only G could go here, G could go here, or G could go in M and O. So basically, I don't really have a whole lot of options. So we could start a world there. I'm going to hold off on that again and kind of go into our last rule before we do anything else, which actually helps us with G. Our last rule says N is a geology major. Just going to plop that right there. And that actually helps us out a lot because now we can kind of figure out where our G goes. So this is pretty much all of the rules. I've placed all of my rules down. I've written them out. Technically, I don't really need rule 5 hanging around because I've got it over there that I can't put G there. I don't really have to think about that anymore. So really, I'm only focused on rule 2 because rule 1 isn't really like a rule that affects the placement of our diagrams. It's just affecting the number of variables that we have. So really, we only have to worry about rule 2 technically at this point. So I am actually going to, I think you could start with a couple of places here. You can figure out where F and G and H go, where my remaining F could go. But I actually am going to start with that G rule just because we were talking about it. Because we only have 1 more G left. So basically I can go over here, I can cross out my G. I've placed my G, technically cross out an F and an L too, since I've placed that. And I only have 1 more G. And technically G can only go into one of 2 spots, either with M or with O. So because it can go into one of these 2 spots, I'm going to create a copy and make it so I don't have to worry about G anymore because I will have it placed. So I'm going to have one where G is here, one where G is here. Now I have all my G placed which is great. And I can kind of go off of my second rule even, because my second rule talks about F and G, right? Extend this out. Give myself some more space. I really suck at giving myself some space. Need to work on it. So I could look at that first world. I've got my FG placed, which means that my other F is gonna have to be H, which means it can't go there, can't go here. F and H can only go into O and P. So I'm gonna create a third world where that's happening. I don't have to worry about my G's. So I'm gonna have one where F and H are here. F and H are here. I'm gonna do the same thing down here. I'm gonna figure out where I'm gonna put my F and H so I don't have to think about it anymore. I only have two places that I could put that H, either with M where my other F is, or with P and I can use it as my other F. So I'm gonna make a world. You guys are already probably seeing what's happening, but I'm going to just explain it a little bit more. So we said F and H could go into M, or F and H can go into P. Now what happens is I don't have to worry about F and H anymore, but I'm going to think about where I can put my F and G. So in my first world, don't have to worry about it. My F and G are placed, my F and H are placed. Third world, don't have to think about it. FG, FH. Second world, I do have to think about where I'm going to put that second F. And that second F can only be with G, which means F is going to bounce between N and O right now. But in that fourth world, my two F's are already placed and my two G's are already placed. When you've already placed your variables and you've moved on to a new rule, or you don't have them basically flip-flopping like this, you cannot move them. So I've placed these variables here for a reason. I've placed my two G's here for a reason. I've placed my F and H here for a reason. I don't really care why. I don't have to remember why. I don't need to relook at my rules. I'm not going to make it fit. I can't pick up my G's and move them around. So technically this world just dies, doing less work than you need to do. I don't have to think about where my other variables are, or where those variables came from, why I put them there, because I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. So I'm going to keep that diagram though, because I run out of space all the time. So we've got FG place, FH place. That's pretty much all of our rules, but we can still kind of move on, or at least continue into this in these diagrams, because we can actually figure out where some of our other variables are going to go, specifically our L's, because we have all of our F's placed, which means every empty spot on that top row is going to be an L. So I can just go in here, go L, L, L. So in the second world, F and L are going to flip-flop between one another, which is fine. And we can kind of figure out our other remaining variables, which is one of the H's and a J. At this point, they've become floaters. I don't really care where I put them. Where I put them is not going to violate any of our rules. So we don't have to worry about where we're going to put them. They're basically flip-flopping between one another. So in this first world, my two empty spots are P and R, which means that H and J are going to flip-flop between one another. World number 3, my two empty spots are O and R, which means H and J are flip-flopping. And in number 2, my two empty spaces are still P and R, H and J are flip-flopping. And those are our worlds. We didn't end up needing this fourth world, so I'll just erase it. So like I said, it's a pretty simple game, and by that I mean like it's not creating a whole lot of worlds for us, which is good because I don't have to worry about squeezing it in on one spot. So let me move all of this over so we can get to our questions. Well, maybe. Okay. Don't need that. Okay. So we're going to go into our first question, which is a list question. It says, which one of the following could be a list of the majors M, N, O, P, and R, respectively? List questions, I say you do not need your diagrams. You can actually figure it out by your rules most of the time. So if we go through our rules, we can go through and figure out the ones that are violating it and eliminate those, and it usually will get us to our correct answer. So this one is a little bit different, which is why I give that caveat of usually. It's a little bit different because we have like two categories that we got here, the speech and the major. So for example, our first rule here doesn't really affect, at least at face value, what majors they're taking. It might affect it in the diagram and we're not really realizing it, but with our rules right now, we can just go through the ones that are going to affect the majors. And then we can kind of look at our diagrams if we need to, if we're left with any empty ones, or if we're left with like 2 or 3 of them. So the first rule, can't really do much with that. Second rule, can't really do much with that. Third and fourth rule, can't really do much with that. We know that P and R are not geology majors, so that means that if we see geology on the last 2, we can eliminate that, which is going to eliminate D. And we know that Nadia is a geology major, so if we go through the second, because Nadia is the second one here, that eliminates E. So this leads me to believe that the 2 categories actually do have some sort of relationship, and most often they do. You just don't really see it at face value. So now we're going to go through, and thankfully we only have 3 worlds to look at. So we're going to go through and kind of match them up. So we're looking at our major. So it's the second line. 2 geology. Can we have that happen so far? We can in 1 and 3. After that, J and J. Well, okay, we can't have 2 J's. We only have 1 J. So we can eliminate A right off the bat. Looking at B, we can also eliminate B off the bat because we don't have a J. We have to have 2 geology. We have to have 2 history. We have to have 1 geology or 1 journalism. So that leaves me with C. And if we've done it correctly, if we've done our worlds correctly, we're going to find C in our diagram, which is happening. Come on, pen, right here. H, G, G, J, and H. Okay, moving on to the second one. If P speaks on friendship, then which one of the following could be true? So this is what I call an if question. It's basically giving you a restriction. It's kind of like it's giving you a new rule. So if P speaks on friendship, that means that we can only look at the worlds where P is speaking on friendship. And lucky for us, that's only happening in the 3rd world. So we only have 1 world to look at for this question. It's asking us what could be true. And when it's asking you what could be true, it just means that it has to happen once within your world in order for it to be the correct answer. Because think about how flexible could be true is. Think about like the weatherman. It could rain and then it doesn't rain, or it could be sunny today and then it does rain. Could be is not certain. So that means that it can happen, or it only has to happen once. It doesn't have to happen in all of your worlds. So what could be true in that 3rd world? M is history. Nope. M is G. N speaks on friendship. Nope. N is speaking on L. O speaks on friendship. O speaking on L. O is a journalism major. I like that. I could have J there. And P is a J major. Nope. P is H. So our correct answer is D. And that's because we can have O be J. It would just force R to be H. Okay. Question number 3 says, if O is a geology major, who speaks on friendship? So it's giving us 2 things to look at. Then which one of the following must be true? So I'm going to focus on that first part of the question, then we'll attack the second part. So the first part is giving me a restriction, which means I have to look at my worlds and figure out where it's matching up. O being a geology with friendship. That can happen right here. O is geology, and we can flip F over here, L over here. So if this is confusing for you, if these flip-flops are confusing, or like even this is confusing, break it up into another world where they are interchanging with one another. Because it's important that you can read your diagram. If you can't read your diagram, you're going to miss points. So I want you to be able to read your diagram. But in this case, we can flip-flop F and L, which means F is going to go here with our geology major. Which one of the following must be true? So must be true is different from could be true. Must be true meaning that it has to happen. It must be true that it has to rain today. It has to be true. It has 100% chance of happening. Think of it like that. So in this world, for this question type, this must be true has to happen to all the worlds where O is a G major and speaks on friendship. That's only this world, which is really nice, which means we only have to figure out what has to happen in here. Solidified, concrete. Does it have to be true that M is a history major? I like that right off the bat. I like that one. B, does N have to speak on friendship? Nope, we said that N is going to be speaking on L because we'll have to flip-flop them, so that's wrong. P speaks on friendship. Nope, P is speaking on L. P is a history major and R is a J major. I'm talking about those at once because they can basically flip-flop. Even though it's possible that P could be an H and R could be a J, they are flip-flopping. It does not have to happen. P could also be a J, R could also be an H. So because it doesn't have to happen, that's why those two are wrong. So we are left with A as our correct answer choice. Next one. If N speaks on friendship, which one of the following must be false? So first things first, I'm going to figure out where N speaks on friendship. That's actually happening in the world that we were just in. So it's happening in world number 2. The only thing that we can change really is that it's not flip-flopping. N is going to have to speak on F. With must be false questions, in my opinion, they're very confusing because you're looking at something that can't happen. And that's kind of hard to wrap your mind around when you're looking at stuff that could happen. So think about it like this. If it is a must be false, that means it 100% cannot happen, which means that our 4 wrong answer choices could happen. So what we can do is we can go through our 4 answer choices or our answer choices and figure out which ones can happen and eliminate them. That's going to create our must be false. So for example, M is a geology major. That's not happening here. So I'm kind of liking this one right now. I guess I could just do this. B is a history major. That could be true. So it means that it can't be true, which means that we can eliminate B. O is a geology major. That could be true. It actually has to be true, which means that it can't 100% be false. So we can eliminate that. P is a history major. That could be true. So it's not 100% false. We can delete that one. R is a history major. Same thing with P. It could be true that R is a history major, which takes away from that 100% false. So we can delete that one. And that leaves us with M is a geology major. We cannot have that happen when N speaks on F. Yeah, this is our last one. Our last one says R must be a geography. Oh my goodness. R must be a journalism major if which one of the following is true. So this one is kind of tricky. It's basically saying which one of the following makes it so R must be a journalism major, which is going to be pretty tricky because R has the option of being H or J in all of our worlds. So we have to pick something that is going to force R to be J. So if I have M as a geology major and P as a history major, does that force R to be J? So up here in my world number 1, I have M as G, P as H. It does force R to be J because it takes away from that option. So I like that so far. But I have another world down here where M could be G and P could be H. And that does not force R to have J because we can still flip-flop between O, which means that this one is not our correct answer choice. Meaning if M is G and P is H, I can still have the option of having R be anything but J. So we can eliminate that one. Looking at answer choice B, we have O as a geology major and M as a history major. So that's only happening in this world. We can have O as a geology major, M as a history major. I'm still not forced to pick J for R. I can still flip-flop between the two. So that means that B is out as well. I want to find something that's going to force me to pick R being J all the time. C says O is a geology major and P is a history major. Well, same world, O's geology, P's history. That's going to force us to pick J here because I don't have any other option. And I don't have another world where O is G. So I like this one so far, but let's go through D and E. D says both M and N speak on friendship. That happens, same world here. But again, it doesn't force me to pick J for R, so don't like that one. And then the last one, M and P speak on friendship. That happens down here. It's not forcing me to pick J for R. So our answer choice is going to be C. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions about making worlds or this game or in general with games or the LSAT or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me and ask. Saturdays at 5 p.m. Central Time, I have a class that's $25 that we go over how to make worlds for In-N-Out games using my favorite method, Circle Slash, which makes In-N-Out games go within like 4 to 5 minutes per game, which is really, really nice, especially when you start getting game forwards with In-N-Out. So much easier. And then I host this free class every single Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time, where we go over how to build worlds on like grouping, hybrid, and sequencing games, and pretty much anything that's not in In-N-Out game. So feel free to join any of those classes. I have April all posted, and then I'll probably post May dates near the end of April. So have a good night.